since you guys are new to us, and anyone who hasn't done a virtual tasting with us before or done any tasting with us, I give a little bit of background and context on us as a brand so you can kind of familiarize with who we are. But this image I've got pulled up here is Jason. So he's the owner and the winemaker, with his beautiful family. Angelica is his wife, and then their daughter, Bella. I think she's 13 right now. Obnoxiously beautiful family. But yeah, we're a pretty small team. It's Jason, and we have another gal on the team. Her name is Deb. She handles all of our shipping, logistics, does a lot of wine club management. And then there's myself. So anything that's direct sales related, hospitality, anyone who actually comes and does a tasting with us in person, I'm hosting them, and any events that kind of falls under my umbrella. But I've been with Modus for about 3 years, and then working in the wine industry for about 8.5 years now. Oddly enough, we've been doing virtual tastings since the summer of 2019. We hit a point, because I'm the only person who hosts our tastings, we were hitting a mark where we had to turn away like 30% of our reservation requests. I can only see so many people in a day, and Jason started trying to figure out how to scale our availability to other people. And he thought, maybe if we can't see people here when they're in town, we can offer to ship them wines when they're back home, and then they can get online and tune into like a virtual tasting that we do with them from the tasting room. And so we set that program up and started rolling it out in, I want to say like June 2019, something like that. So when this whole COVID situation rolled around, we were very fortunately already set up to do this. So kind of crazy timing. So this is the facility that we base out of. Our brand is super small. Our brand itself is relatively virtual. So St. Helena area, that's where Brasswood is, just north of the CIA, like on the western side of Highway 29. Yeah, so these guys are a custom crush facility. This is kind of a shot of their outdoor event space. They're one of the few properties in Napa County licensed to do weddings. So they do a lot of outdoor event space here. And then they've got a full service restaurant and bar. Brasswood, as a label, they do make their own wines. They have their own dedicated tasting room. But where this giant red arrow is pointing is actually where I host our tasting. So it's this private, kind of like living room setting. There's a couch and a fireplace. So when the world is normal, this is where our tastings are. And then across this little driveway area here is the tank room. And then back underneath that tree line is about 17,000 square feet of caves. It's a pretty sizable cave system. So yeah, it's us, Modus Operandi, and we operate alongside about 20 other brands making their wines at that same spot currently. So it's very much like a co-op sort of situation. So a little bit of backstory on Jason, as an owner and a winemaker. He didn't hail from a wine collecting family. He actually grew up in Texas, and he got into wines working as a server in at some higher end restaurants in Dallas area. So with him working alongside sommeliers and wine buyers, people like that were exposing him to some really cool wines at an early age. And he got his real estate license when he turned 21, pursued that pretty heavily for about a year. And then after a year's time, Angelica, his wife, this is actually when they were dating, but she sat him down and, said, hey, I know you think real estate's your thing. It's pretty clear to me it's not, because you're pretty terrible at this. So I think you need to find a different line of work to go into. And that honest conversation was the impetus for pretty much to prompt Jason to think of like, okay, what am I truly passionate about? And Angelica asked him as much. She said, what do you think you could pursue a career in? And they kicked around a bunch of ideas, and She said, "You've been into wine for such a long time. Is there anything you could do with that?" And Jason always describes it as a light bulb moment. He was like, "Oh my gosh, I think I want to make wine," which is a pretty lofty goal for a kid from Texas with no experience, like no ties to the industry, no money to pursue that with. But he used what resources he had at the time, which was study materials and books. So all of the, textbooks, winemaking, trade publications, anything he could get his hands on, he studied pretty religiously for as long as he could until, they hit a marker. He checked back in with Angelica and was like, "Okay, I think the next step is to live in an area where I can learn more about wine production." So they saved up their money. They had a huge garage sale. They pretty much sold all the furniture out of their house and packed up the car. And in 2002, drove out to Napa, and to kind of, keep a flow of income, Jason kept working in restaurants. So in the evenings, he would work restaurant shifts as a server. So yeah, Jason worked as a server at La Toca in the evenings. And then during the day, he would pick up kind of harvest internship jobs, working production in different wine cellars, kind of getting some experience under his belt. And one day, a few of his colleagues took him out for quote unquote research and development. It's just day drinking for professionals. But they went out to Amazetta, and some stars aligned, and Jason ended up meeting this gentleman who happened to be visiting the property that day. This guy's name was Tom, many years Jason's senior. So Jason was in his early 20s at this point. And Jason finds out through conversation, this guy has a backyard vineyard essentially. And he says, "Hey, I don't know if this is too forward of me to ask, but if you're going to have any leftover grapes after harvest, I would love to get that off your hands. I'd be more than happy to come hand pick it myself. Good or bad fruit doesn't matter to me. Like, I'll cart it over to my apartment and ferment it there. I truly just want to get started somewhere." And as luck had it, this guy told Jason, he's like, "Oh, honestly, I don't even know the first thing about vines or vineyards." And he explained to Jason, he said, "This vineyard on this property I bought the land for a house that's on that property, and I'm going to renovate it. It's going to become a vacation rental. It's rental. It's an investment property, and it came with vines, but I really wouldn't know what to do with them. So you've got free reign over it. If you want to like run your little winemaking project out of there, go to town, And he extended the offer to Jason and said, "If you can tell me what equipment you would need to make your wine, I could probably find it for you. I've got a 3-car garage on site. Granted, it's nothing fancy, but if you don't want to cart everything over to your apartment, we could get you set up on the same property." And it's pretty much what happened. So Jason just started making about 200 cases of cab out of this guy's 3-car garage in 2002. And as you can guess, it's a pretty, non-traditional setting. He wasn't in an environment where he was working underneath another winemaker or in a classroom where people were telling him what to do and when. So he had to be very resourceful and figure a lot out on his own. But he would reach out to a lot of other folks in the Valley, people that he looked up to, and he would ask for advice and insight along the way. And over time, that helped him. He would pull out the best bits of knowledge, and he strung together his own method of operation. So that's where the name comes from in Latin. That's Modus Operandi. But yeah, branded the company officially in 2004. So we consider that our inaugural vintage, and it's been a pretty slow and quiet growth for us since, but pretty steady. I mean, we're right at about 2,200 cases now for our production.
How did he crush the grapes working out of a garage?
I think he had an old school basket press. I'm sure he was, it was pretty, pretty basic operation. But I think the cool part of that is like when you have to figure things out on your own and you're learning everything pretty much from the ground up. I don't know. I think it's a good way to learn. And I know Jason himself, like he's very much a hands-on learning kind of person. He learns by doing, and I mean, there was a time where he considered going to UC Davis, but for him, he was like, I just don't think I'm going to thrive in an environment where I'm like wearing a lab coat and drawing molecules. I need to like go get my hands dirty. And everyone's learning style is different, but I think that's how he thrives. First wine, Sauvignon Blanc.
Tropical.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, so the fruit that we're sourcing for this, and I should mention, on top of like us operating out of a custom crush facility, we source all of our fruit as well. So the Sauvignon Blanc, Jason's purchasing from a grower in Rutherford called Dalla Gasparina. I think total they farm maybe 15, 20 acres. It's pretty small. And Jason's been producing from that site since 2006. And it's been the same 9 rows of vines every single year. So I wouldn't say there's a significant amount of vintage variation. Like it's a pretty consistent wine. And I know overall with what Jason's doing in communication with vineyard management, he will have them leave clusters on the vine maybe about a week longer than most people do. And it leans more towards that like riper, more tropical fruit note.
This is really nice, very easy to drink. It seems like it would go with a lot of different dishes.
Yeah, when we pre-COVID, when we would host private dinners, there was a dish that we paired with this, and it was like a hamachi crudo with citrus and microgreens. It was excellent in the summer. And then of course we've got that glass cork that you guys ran into.
It was a surprise.
I hope you didn't try and tap into that with a Corvin. I had some guests a while ago, and luckily they had a backup needle, but yeah.
But you know, it's just not something you see very often. I mean, how many we've opened hundreds and hundreds of bottles of wines in the last few months. This is the first time we've seen those.
Where you see them. I know the first place that I ran into the glass cork was at Robert Sinsky Vineyards. They use that on quite a few of their white wines. I mean, honestly, the glass corks are great. So Jason decided on this for a couple of reasons. He didn't want to use traditional cork in the white wines, but he also didn't want to do screw cap. And from a technical standpoint, there's nothing inferior about screw cap. Like they're very reliable. They're completely functional. I think some of the consumer interpretation can be on the market that it's lower quality. So we didn't want to do that. So we came across glass cork, and I'm not entirely sure like how Jason came across that or if someone introduced it to him, but they do have a highly reliable OTR, oxygen transfer rate. So they're great for both white and red wines. And obviously you're not going to end up with a corked bottle. We do just on the production side. So Sauvignon Blanc goes through stainless steel fermentation, and then we'll do a touch of oak aging. It doesn't go over 20% new French oak. It's always a majority neutral, and we'll age it for like 8 or 9 months. Nothing significant, but just to kind of soften out the edges. So yeah, I'm going to jog your memories with this. This is another reason for the glass cork. Okay, so 2009, Obamas were in the White House. They had that state dinner that those DC couples snuck into. Does that ring a bell?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so by some crazy string of events, our Sauvignon Blanc ended up being the first course wine at that dinner. So one of Jason's colleagues that he used to work with in restaurants, this gentleman moved out to Chicago and ended up working with the celebrity chef Marcus Samuelson, who was selected by the Obamas to, do food for the state dinner, cook for them. And Jason's old colleague was on that team of people who were in charge of the food and wine pairing. And so Jason didn't really know until pretty much after the fact of this being selected, but he, got a call from the White House and figured it out pretty quickly after that. And They told him, Mr. Moore, we've selected your Sauvignon Blanc to be poured for our state dinner. We need you to send however many cases to a third-party offsite location so we can test for tampering, blah, blah, blah. So that's another ode to the glass cork thing. It's a lot harder to tamper with a bottle of wine if you've got a glass cork instead of a standard one. So yeah, and Jason has the whole the menu, and then this letter written by White House, and the schedule of events and all that from that evening. He's got this framed and up above his dining room table, so I've had the chance to see this. It's pretty cool. Cheese pairing recommendations. Just to kind of add a little sidebar on this, all of the cheese pairings that I send out recommendation wise, this is what we actually use in our tastings in person when people come to visit us. So it's the same thing as what we do in the tasting room.
Okay.
But yeah, purple haze, it's goat's milk cheese seasoned with fennel pollen and lavender. So those qualities tend to bring out some of the tropical fruit notes in the Sauvignon Blanc. It accentuates it really well. So this with like a little crostini or baguette, good to rock and roll. All right, and then we're into the Pinot whenever you guys are ready. Pinot Noir, feel free to sip on that. I do have a brief little video I'm going to show you guys of the fruit sorting process. So for folks that I host virtually, if they've never seen an optical sorter, this is a fun little video that Jason put together kind of explaining that process. But as I'm sure you guys know, when fruit's brought up to the winery, everything goes down a sorting table. Jason and I will stand on either side of that and manually pull out anything that clearly shouldn't be in there, like overripe and underripe clusters, leaves, twigs, that sort of thing. Goes through a destemmer, and then we implement the optical sorter machinery after that. So enjoy the Pinot. I'm going to play this little video and you guys can tell me what you think.
Hey there, winemaker Jason Moore here from Modus Operandi Cellars in Napa. I wanted to give you guys a quick video about our optical sorting system that we get to enjoy at the winery. It's really cool. So this thing, basically what happens is the fruit is destemmed, and the berries are placed onto this blue circulating table that essentially throws the berries off the end of the table. And right as it throws them off the end of that table, as you can see them flying off here, there's an optical eye with a computer that's seeing these berries and other things that are flying off the edge of this table in super, super, super quick fashion. It decides if it likes what it sees or if it doesn't like what it sees. Liking would be, perfect berries of appropriate color and whatnot. Things that it would not like would be pieces of stems, pieces of leaves, lizards, sticks, bugs, whatever. And so the cool thing is it makes that split-second decision while that organic material is flying through the air. Above where the eye is, there's actually a series of blowholes that are pressurized with air, and those puffs you hear, those that's the air literally shooting backwards and kind of down and backwards, essentially, so that it's shooting those pieces of leaves, shooting that material towards a different trajectory, I should say, and shooting it towards a trash collection bin below it versus letting the fruit kind of fly on past without doing anything. So the fruit flies past, falls into the pump sump so we can pump the fruit off into the tank, whereas the trash gets collected and it essentially goes away. So I'll slow things down here, and you'll see right here a couple of leaves that made their way onto the table, and the puff, boom, slow-mo, boom, boom. Yeah. So that leaf is gone backwards and down. It is gone now. It's not going to be in the tank that we're fermenting. And the only thing left that's going off to the tank is the perfect fruit that we want to have in there. So again, this is pretty cool. Something that we've been using in the wine industry for a little bit now. And it just helps to ensure that nothing but the most perfect fruit goes into your fermentation tank and ultimately into your wine. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Any questions? feel free to reply. Give me some thoughts. Thanks.
All your wines go through this optical sorting, or are there just certain grapes that you do this for?
All of the red wines, to my knowledge, that's what Jason told me. And I think with, technically there are a couple of other custom crush facilities that we use for cost effectiveness, but the site where we're doing this, I know we use for all of our red wines. So the Pinot is my personal favorite, and I'm not to like downplay the rest of the wines. They're all great and everyone finds what they love, but the Pinot is definitely the shining star for me. And so the fruit for this one's coming from Russian River, the Bacigalupi family. So yeah, this family, they've been around, gosh, they're going into their 4th generation. And in terms of Russian River Valley, they're kind of close to the Healdsburg area. They're in what Jason and I call it, the cool kids neighborhood. They're near Williams-Sellium and Edge Hill and Arista, those guys. And so with this one, we make a little bit of rosé. So Jason and I just bottled the 2020 vintage rosé on, what was it, last Monday? We make like 80 cases. It's a pretty small amount. In past years, we've done Sauvignon style, but this year we did direct to press. So he was able to purchase a little bit more fruit from the Baccigalupis, specifically to make rosé with. But in prior years, we've done the Sauvignon method. Okay, so this is a little snapshot of Jason giving Pam Bacigalupi, she's the matriarch, he's giving her a hug. This woman is pretty remarkable. So she's the one who's out in the vineyard at 0 dark 30, supervising the pick. She's the one with her work gloves, like ratcheting down the straps of all the bins with fruit in them. And then she's the one like hand delivering grapes to us at some ungodly hour of the morning. But she's a pretty amazing woman. And their family overall, they're farming 120 acres. They're definitely known more for Chardonnay and Pinot, but they grow a smattering of lots of other different grape varieties.
So she grows 120 total acres. Then how much of that, how many acres do you take for your production?
So we're purchasing just enough fruit to, I would say year to year, we're making about 200 cases of the Pinot. And on the back of each bottle, we do write our production. So it should be printed on the back of the label to say 8 barrels produced or something like that. So I know you're getting about 2 barrels per ton of fruit on average. Yeah, this is, I love bottle shock. But yeah, so you guys are familiar. It ties into that whole story of the judgment in Paris. And I promise there's a reason I'm bringing this up. So as you'll remember, the winning wines were 73 vintage Cab from Stag's Leap Vineyard, and then that Chardonnay from Chateau Montelena, same vintage, 1973. I talk to people all the time who are familiar with this backstory, or I'll go into greater depth and explain it more. But I think what very few people know is about 40% of the fruit that went into making that Chardonnay from Chateau Montelena was from the Bacigalupi family. So that's why they have a lot of renown in the grape growing and winemaking community. A lot of winemakers, I think, have to enter like a waiting list to be able to purchase fruit from this family. I've got the original bill of lading pulled up here that Charles Bacigalupi sold to Chateau Montelena to make that Chardonnay, but kind of a cool piece of history. My favorite pairing of all time. I love this cheese. Honestly, I think I always have at least 2 small wedges of this cheese in my fridge at any given time. It's really great with the Pinot. And as I'm sure you guys know, this one I selected specifically because it's younger Gouda. And so it's not going to have quite as much of a crumbly texture. It's still relatively soft. It has slight development of those salt crystals, and to pair that with a wine like the Pinot that we've got that's very fruity and luscious, it kind of brightens up those floral and fruit qualities really well. Thoughts on the Pinot overall?
Fabulous. I mean, I really like, this is really nice. I mean, I taste red fruit.
Yeah, that one, I'm trying to think. I can send you guys some food pairing ideas if it's something that you want on file, but I know when we do lunch pairings on property, because Brasswood, they have a restaurant, so I'll host people there for lunches as well, and then I'll do a paired menu. And with the Pinot, we'll do like a stuffed portobello mushroom that's to die for. Obviously that midnight moon cheese is pretty good with it, but yeah, I got the chance to do like write down some tasting notes on that. And I think I love the Pinot because there's just such a complex bouquet from that wine. I feel like you get vanilla bean and Earl Grey tea and hibiscus leaves and violet. I don't think it's not as much of an earthy Pinot, and especially in the style that Jason's producing it, I think it's a great textbook example of Russian River Valley Pinot.
Yeah, it's very nice.
All right, and then whenever you're ready for the next one, we'll transition into the Vicarious.
So Vicarious is a blend.
Yes, so Vicarious, this one is a wine that Jason's pretty much been doing since day one. And I'll pull it up in the tech sheet here in a second, but Jason sources from, a lot of these different vineyards, and essentially he bottles wines, like the best wines we send out to our wine club, because those guys are like our bread and butter. And so he'll do single vineyard, single varietal bottlings of Merlot and Cab and Malbec and Syrah. And then once he knows his base production commitment of what he has to make for the wine club for that coming year, depending on, yield and production and essentially what he has left to work with, that'll become the Vicarious blend. And it changes a little bit year to year. Every vintage is unique to itself, but the entire aim with Vicarious is for it to be the most approachable, accessible wine we do. It's our most inexpensive red, and we've got a pretty wide price range. We make wines going from $40 a bottle up to $250. And Vicarious, we retail at $55. We want this to be the kind of wine that folks could take to a dinner party and everyone's happy with it. And this, I believe you guys should have the 2017 vintage. This is exactly the blend that's in that bottle.
So this tastes like the tannins are a little stronger in this one than the Pinot Noirs.
Yeah, I would say so, especially with it being Cabernet Sauvignon dominant. I think it definitely shows the Cab qualities in there pretty well. And especially with other varietals like the Petite Syrah and the Malbec, it'll definitely land on the slightly more tannic side of the scale.
And this is a wine that you can keep over time. I mean, you can keep this for years, right?
Yeah, you could. I know if Jason were on here, we've had a lot of club members that have reached out over the years and they've said like, oh, I've been saving this bottle since 2006 or whatever. And he always tells people, he's like, I started a winery, I didn't start a museum, like drink the wine. But Jason's personality, like he prefers younger wines. That's just his palate. I've had older vintages of Vicarious that have aged really well. But I know for him, like we have plenty of other wines that can fit that bill where you're aging 10 to 15 years. I think Vicarious is just one of those wines. It's kind of up to the, collector or the wine drinker. If you want to age it, you can, but you don't have to. Beamster has like different categories of how long they're aging their cheeses. So they'll do 12 months all the way up to 36 months. So this one, it's, a more, I wouldn't say a more aged version of compared to Cypress Grove, because it's just a different style overall, but it's still Gouda. But a lot more of the sharpness in flavor quality from those salt crystals cuts through. I mean, this is my like cheat sheet cheese go-to with, if I'm putting together a cheese board at home, having an aged Gouda, especially Beemster, is great because it never fails to go well with any, full-bodied or tannic red wines. All right, and then we're on to cab. Okay, I have one last little video I'm gonna show you guys. So this is a great demonstration of the barrel fermentation projects that Jason does every year. And to kind of be a little bit more specific. So the Napa Valley cab that you guys have, that's got 4 different vineyards that go into it, but each of those vineyards we do we'll do our own bottling of each of those vineyards, if that makes sense. And with one of those each year, it's pretty much whichever vineyard is reaching full ripeness first. That's harvested, brought to the winery, and then Jason will barrel ferment that specific vineyard. So he's not doing it with every single wine. It would be pretty time consuming. I mean, it's time consuming and labor intensive to begin with, but this is one of, in my opinion, this is like the beauty of small production wines, is if you were at a larger volume or larger scale, it just wouldn't make the most amount of sense to do this because it is very labor intensive. the Napa Valley Cab, which we also produce on their own. So Roca, Farella, and Ed Cora vineyards, we do single vineyard cab productions of each of those. We usually make about 100 cases each. And there is a little bit of Merlot that finds its way into the Napa Valley Cab. It's about 14%. But yeah, so each of these vineyards, like the Ed Cora, you're looking at Atlas Peak area, so higher elevation, more western facing slopes overall, and then that in contrast with Farella and Roca Vineyard, which are both in Coombsville. So you've got more rolling hills and a little bit more of a moderating cooling effect from the San Pablo Bay to the south. It'll kind of blow in a bit of a breeze overnight, which cools everything down. And I don't know how familiar you guys are with Coombsville. It's one of my favorite areas of the valley personally.
And that's because of the quality of the grapes that come out of that area? Is that why it's your favorite?
Yeah, there's a few different, I mean, it's the most recently recognized AVA. It got its status in 2013, so super recently. And it actually Farella Vineyard. So Tom Farella, the gentleman who owns that vineyard, his father started growing grapes in that area in like the early 70s. And anytime you see Coombsville listed on a bottle of wine, it's because of Tom Farella. So he was the gentleman who pretty much started the petitioning and drafted a bunch of paperwork to make Coombsville its own recognized sub-appellation. And he's a really cool, like salt of the earth kind of guy. If you haven't tasted Farella wines, I highly encourage you to. They're really amazing. Overall, the cabs that Jason does, I mean, we're aging at least 24 months in barrel. There's other cabs that we produce. I'll get into those in a little bit that we age for longer, but yeah, I know Jason's really good about sampling wines in barrel as they age, and he pretty much makes the call on, okay, this is ready to schedule for bottling, or I think this needs a few more months. He's pretty intuitive about figuring that out before we're not just like robotically or automatically forcing anything into bottle if it's not ready. This one seems to be, in my experience in the time that we've been doing these virtual tastings, Dreamweaver is the one cheese that people abroad kind of have a harder time finding. So lately I've been recommending Taleggio, which is great, or any kind of brie. I think would go pretty well with this, something that's nice and creamy and rich to kind of combat a lot of those tannins.
Yeah, I think brie would be great with this.
We kind of went through the lineup of the wines that I sent you guys, and this is what we send everybody. Those 4 wines are pre-selected. And I am gonna kind of just show you the other wines that we do, because Jason makes at least 10, probably 12 different wines now. So I'll show you what those are briefly, and then I'll show you kind of how our club structure is. So we do a few single vineyard Syrah. As I mentioned earlier, Jason will produce Syrah to bottle on its own, but some of that does end up in the Vicarious blend. We are going to be releasing a Chardonnay for the kind of the first time. We did a little bit of a test run with it, with maybe 50 cases of Chardonnay that Jason made last year, because traditionally we've only done Sauvignon Blanc, and we tested the waters with our mailing list and wine club, so to speak, to see how Chardonnay would be received, and people went nuts for it. So I think we're going to start consistently producing a Chardonnay.
That'd be nice.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's going to come from, let's see, that Chardonnay is coming from Oak Knoll, from Mirhana Vineyard, I believe. Pinot, you guys tried the Bacigalupi. Jason did start another project with Silver Eagle Vineyard over in Occidental. Thomas Rivers Brown does a lot of work over there. We're super excited. I love that area. All right, so collection, this, we make a wine called Collection, and this is our version of a reserve essentially. We named it Collection instead of Reserve because that's the name of the barrel series that Jason purchases. So he's a huge barrel nerd. The cooperage that produces this is Sylvan. So it took Jason like 3 years at least to wear down Jean-Luc Sylvan and convince him to sell one of these barrels to us each year. The reasoning that they're so rare, like these barrels are primarily kept in France and used at a fair number of like the first growth chateaus. There's maybe 15 of these that are exported to the US every year, and we get one of them. So we make 2 barrels of this wine each year, and it's essentially like whatever Jason deems to be the best cab from that year. And because of that, it's not a wine that we make every single year. We're just doing it in the years that turn out very exceptionally. But kind of the importance behind this is that these barrels are being made from French oak trees that are highly renowned by the French government, so much so that they're given their own names, and they're like 300 to 400 years old. And these trees are only cut down when they're at a major risk of falling on their own. But yeah, so we do like gold inscription on the bottle. Each vintage that we do is named after that tree. So Chêne de Bangor was the name of this tree. And then also listed as the sprout date of that tree and the cut down date. So 1638 to 2008. So this is one of those wines that we age for a minimum of 3 years in barrel and another 2 years in bottle, sometimes 3. But this year, I believe 2016 will be the vintage that we're releasing. And let's see, we talked about some of these single vineyard wines that we do. This is kind of how we're structured, and I get a lot of questions from folks joining virtual tastings that are like, okay, are you guys distributed? Like, how do people access your wines to begin with? We're at least 90% direct to consumer. And I would say a majority of that is our club. So that one, so for our club, we do 3 shipments a year. I'm just getting all the details pulled up on here. So we do 3 shipments a year, and it's either 4, 8, or 12 bottles per shipment. So essentially you're either getting 1, 2, or 3 cases over the course of a calendar year. All of that is customizable, and a lot of the time what happens, we'll send an email in advance that says, hey, here's what we've selected to go out in the wine club shipment. Here's what's going to show up if we don't hear from you. But a lot of the time folks will either call or email or text us and say, hey, I'd rather get 2 more of the Pinot and, whatever else. They can mix and match and customize whatever they want to do. We also do what Jason refers to as a layaway option. So we've structured the club to where if folks prefer to just get billed once before they ship out, then that's great. We can do that. But we also do like a payment plan option, which is a little bit more budget friendly month to month. So we just take whatever the total cost of the club would be per shipment and then just break it down into monthly chunks. So a lot of people have done that too. And let's see, these are just the different tiers: Premier, Elite, and Collector. For anyone joining the club now, folks will receive free shipping on all the wines. And we're tailoring the wine club going forward. So you notice like the Vicarious bottle, that label's a little bit different from the other bottles. Modus Operandi itself, kind of the direction that Jason's taking that is we're like Modus Operandi, that's going to be primarily like single vineyard, single varietal wines. And those are what we'll guarantee to the club. Because once we reach a certain number of club members, we want to take care of those folks first. So essentially being in the club is what guarantees receiving those wines. And then, yeah, we always give folks the option. I usually drop just like my cell phone number and email, which you guys have my info, so you can easily get a hold of me. But we offer people too, if they want to order wine the day of, if they don't want to do the club, they're more than welcome to do that too. Thank you guys for reaching out to us. This is great.
Well, thank you for sending the wines. We really enjoyed this.